Start now. Yep. Good evening, folks. We're going to give everybody a couple minutes to log in, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'll go ahead and get us started. My name is Chelsea Jander, Senior Park Project Manager from the Development Division of Parks and Recreation. With me this evening, we have a team tonight from Development, Operations, and Resource Management Division. The Department of Parks and Recreation, also known as DPR, built Heritage Park in 1971, and over that decade moved 7 Victorian buildings from other parts of the city into the park, creating an 1880s style Victorian preserve. Today, the park serves as an amenity for residents and visitors to enjoy. DPR hosts events including outdoor movies, the park's tea house has daily visitors, and the temple and back lawn are a popular venue for weddings. While the Scentless Cottage, McConaughey House, and temple are actively used, 4 of the buildings are not used at this time. We are reaching out to you to show our progress on the project and hear your thoughts. Now I will hand it over to David Souls, who will walk through some housekeeping items and present the project update.
Thanks, Chelsea. Good evening. I'm David Souls, Park Project Manager with the County Department of Parks and Rec. I hope everybody's doing well tonight on a lovely night. We're using the Zoom webinar platform, so you're not going to have web microphone or camera access, but you'll be able to write in your questions or comments using the Q&A feature. So just click on that Q&A icon in the toolbar shown here and then type in your question. You can do that anytime throughout the presentation. We'll either respond directly in the answer section there, or we'll do our best to address the comment in the live Q&A session that's going to happen at the end of this presentation. You may also want to write down the phone number and the meeting ID on the screen here. So you can use this to call in if you lose your internet connection at any point during the meeting. And a recorded version will also be available online tomorrow. And we'll share the links at the end of the presentation. And they'll be available on the project webpage. You'll also see in the chat bar there that we'll add some of those links. So, if you're using a cell phone, mobile device, then that Q&A feature is located on the bottom right of your screen. A quick background review where we've been. So the County Board of Supervisors directed Department of Parks and Rec to renovate the interiors of these unused buildings in the park to create beautiful historic inns. There'll also be renovations to the public restrooms at Sunless Cottage and improvements and new amenities to the outdoor spaces of the park. We started this project last fall with a project kickoff and public outreach. And we'll provide a summary of the feedback we received from the first public meetings in November and our first online survey. Let's see, so that brings us now to our second design outreach meeting, where we're going to share what our team has been working on and including the concept designs that we're going to present tonight. We're going to collect the feedback at this meeting and through a second online survey, and then share a link at the end of this presentation for that survey. All feedback that will be considered in the further development of the plans with our next design iteration in the spring, at which point we plan to hold another meeting. That takes us to expecting to complete designs by the summertime, and then ready for a construction start this upcoming winter. So we very much want to hear what you have to say. This is your park. So I'm excited about this, and let's get into it. There are three main components to the project. The first is improving and adding amenities to the outdoor areas of the park. Second is renovating the interiors of the 4 houses to be used for overnight accommodations. And then the final is making improvements to the existing public restrooms in the park office at Sunless Cottage. The intent of this meeting is to present the concept designs for the outdoor areas, and then understand the preferences of the community here tonight and throughout the project, and then use this feedback and these preferences to influence the design. At the next project update meeting in the spring, we'll share more details on the interior renovations. And we'll also share an update on the outdoor areas and how that design goes from tonight and evolves into the next iteration. So tonight, focusing on the outdoor areas. Some more background. Want to start with some images of the park here. The top left image is a view of Heritage Park with the temple in the foreground. And you can see Sunless Cottage is that house on the left. As you follow, and then you follow that back with the other houses. And then all the way, the house in the furthest in the back, that white house there, that's the tea house. And behind that is the existing pergola. And then the photo that you see in the bottom left of the screen here, that's an image of the existing pergola. And on the right-hand side, I have 2 images of the back lawn. So you can see this expansive green space here. The top one is looking north, back into the park, and then the bottom one is looking south. So I mentioned we held our first pair of public meetings this past fall on November 3rd and 4th. And we had an online one and one in the park. And we received we received a lot of good feedback. And we had some really great conversations. And then following the meeting, we posted a survey and we got 127 responses with some very similar feedback, and then a lot of new sort of input that we got from that. So I wanted to go over some of the key comments that we heard from the meetings in the survey. We heard it was important to preserve the historic character of public access to the park. There was a lot of interest in support to expand access to the interior to one or more of those homes. It was also important to expand the green space areas and normal gathering spaces, possible play zones.
Hey, David. Unfortunately, it seems like you're having a little bit of technical issues. So I'll go ahead and recap, just take us a few steps backwards, and then hopefully by that point you'll be able to reconnect. So what David was mentioning was that some of the key comments that we heard from the meeting in the survey was that it was important to preserve the historic character and public access of the park. There's also interest and support to expand access of the interior to one or more of the Victorian era homes. It was also important to expand the green space with picnic areas, informal gathering spaces, and possible play zones. And then we also heard from you that new events or programming should build off of the existing character of the park and its Victorian homes. We also heard that you had questions on noise, traffic, and parking. And also that there was little interest in a performance venue with amplified music, and we will continue to adhere to the noise ordinance for amplified sound. With input from the meetings and survey, we got started on our concept plans, which we will share next. David, do you want to go ahead and try on the next slide?
Yeah, and also it's not my video, maybe that makes a difference. You tell me if this isn't working, please jump in.
David, I'll go ahead and jump in. So we are showing 3 possible designs tonight for the back lawn area. We want to share with you hear from input on all of the designs with the goal of narrowing down our ideas and moving the plan forward. That said, based on our public outreach so far, there are core amenities that we intend to include with all of our project concepts that you'll see tonight. That includes enhanced lighting, new walking paths, drinking fountains, and more shaded areas for picnic spaces. All right, so we're going to focus on the back lawns here because these are the ones that are going to change, that we're proposing to change the most as part of the project. This first concept is called the lone oak tree, where we have one oak tree as part of the outdoor meeting space. This concept plan would formalize the existing use of the back lawn and provide ADA accessibility. This concept creates an ADA accessible plaza. It's all flat with 18-inch tall concrete seat walls that seat approximately 55 people. This is located near the existing pergola, which we would upgrade or replace. This space is meant to function for both outdoor meetings and continue as a wedding venue, as the pergola has been for years. The existing trees would be protected. The new sidewalk would be located within the existing lawn area. All right, this next concept is called the ornamental tree oval. It takes a more formal approach with an oval pathway and ornamental trees around the back lawn. Similar to the previous concept plan, this design provides an ADA accessible plaza with concrete seat walls, approximately seating 60, with lawn area between the first and second rows of the walls to soften the aesthetic. Again, this space is meant to function for both outdoor meetings and continue as a wedding venue, which aligns with the existing use of the back lawn. All right, and lastly is the third concept. It's called Canyon Garden. It's the last of 3 concepts for the back lawn. The design proposes an outdoor meeting space that would be closer to the south end of the park. The new walking paths curve around the perimeter of the lawn with added plantings and ornamental trees. The meeting space has those seat walls again that are built into the existing slope along Bond Street with new ornamental and shade trees. The new walkway is integrated into the existing pergola and lawn areas. So that was a lot of information, but now we're back to the view of the entire park to show the back lawn in context with the rest of the park. Now that concludes our presentation portion for tonight. We will also be posting a survey online. The web address is on the screen. So please feel free to get in touch with David, whose contact information is on the screen, or myself, Chelsea Jander, at any time with more ideas for the park. This is your park, so please tell us what you're thinking. We will also post future public meetings on the park website. We'll take the feedback from today along with the survey to influence the design choices for the park. Now, please post your questions in the Q&A box at the top of your screen. So here's where, as a reminder, we're using that webinar platform, so you won't have access to your microphone or camera, but you will be able to write in questions or comments using the Q&A feature. Just click on the Q&A icon in your toolbar and type in your question. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions and turn things over to Jessica Geisler, who will help moderate the Q&A session.
Hi there, thanks Chelsea. So I have the Q&A pane open right now and we do not yet have any questions. I did see a question that was posted to the chat, so I'll read that, but just as a reminder, use the Q&A please. That will give us a really great recording of every single question that comes through so we can make sure that they get answered. So the first one that popped up for the question is, what is the intent of the amphitheater and will there be any amplified music in that space? So I can hand that one over to David or Chelsea to talk about just the reasoning behind the amphitheater and what it could be used for.
I will start, and I apologize for the glitchy mic. If it continues to be glitchy, please, Chelsea, jump in. What we looked at after receiving the public feedback in November at the meetings and in the survey is that there wasn't a huge appetite, very little appetite for an amphitheater. We still have a lot of interest in meeting spaces, and so we looked at creating small, intimate meeting spaces that did not take up a significant chunk of the open space in the back lawn, or were tucked on the edges. We also, received comments on, amplified music, amplified sound. The intent is not for any of these meeting spaces to be performance venues of any type, but we do recognize that there is a need for power and for amplified voice at times, even for smaller meetings.
Great, thank you, David. And then if I could ask our operations team, Christine or Sam, just to kind of remind the group what the rules are regarding noise within Heritage County Park.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, we abide by the noise limits. It's right now, it's the city ordinance has a noise limit at the property line, and we currently let if somebody's renting the park, we let them know, and then during the event, we have on-site staff that monitors throughout the event and make sure that they're complying by those ordinances.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so we have a question that came in from Janet. Janet is asking, would you be able to consider fruit trees instead of ornamental plants? Just because of the water shortage, we should be planting trees for food instead of just ornamental plants. That's a great comment and question. So regarding the types of plants and trees that we select for different park properties, maybe David or Chelsea, can you talk a little bit about that development process and how that vegetation is selected?
Chelsea, I'm going to give this one to you.
No problem. So yes, I also saw another question in about drought tolerance for plantings. So yes, those are both really good comments to consider, and we will take that feedback. We're at the very beginning of looking at the plantings and that. So we will take that piece of information and feedback back to our landscape design team and see if we can incorporate the fruit trees and the drought tolerance components to any landscaping and plant palette that we select.
Great, thanks, Chelsea. All right, we have got two questions, one from Dan and one from Mike, regarding the maximum amount of people that can attend an event at the park. And I know that for all of our public spaces, we do have some capacity limitations. So I'll hand that one over to Christine or to Sam to talk a little bit about what those rules are for Heritage currently.
I'm gonna send this one to Sam, since he's the one that approves all the events, and he's the one on site. He's our park ranger on site. Sam, are you?
I'm here.
All right.
So the back lawn, the capacity for the back lawn currently for events is 200 people. The capacity for the Temple Beth Israel, which is part of the event space, is maxed out at 150. So as far as what will come, I don't believe that we're planning on having more capacity for that area, but that I think is going to be determined later. But currently the capacity is 200 people on that back lawn.
Great, thank you, Sam. All right, we have a couple of questions regarding the concept design, so it might be helpful to go back through them real quick. There's a question here from Clifford asking about the concept number 1 and whether that was the only one with an amphitheater. So can you pull up, David, the 3 different designs that we had and kind of point out where that congregation space would be for each design?
Yeah, thanks. So on this first concept, Lone Oak Tree, this is what we have is a meeting space with 2 seat walls that seated 55 people, I think. Everybody kind of on those seat walls, and then it's a flat ADA accessible space that's kind of attaches to that, you know, pergola. The idea is that you can have a small meeting there. Alternatively, you could also, you know, use it as the pergola is sometimes used today as a wedding venue, right? Which means that if you have more people in there, it would be they'd be seated or standing on that back lawn space. The second concept's fairly similar. It's a much more, you know, formal approach where you formalize the back lawn space in this whole area. You don't have a large tree to provide the shade in this pergola space / meeting area, but you still have seating walls. That's the dark gray number 4 in there. I think this one's a little more like 60 people. And again, if it's more like a wedding, then you utilize that grass. The third concept's a bit different. We leave the pergola as is. It could be used as it is again for wedding. But any type of you know, seating walls and, you know, meeting space really is tucked into this hillside, you know, pretty close to the Burton House, away from the back space of the back lawn and the canyon, and kind of tucked into the hillside that is against one street here. It makes use of the hillside itself, the slope, to kind of tuck that seating in there. And the capacity for that one is similar, maybe a bit more, but like 65, let's say.
Thanks, David. So just to reiterate, because I think you're breaking up just a little bit there too. We have in concept 1, there's a small amphitheater for about 55 or so people. Concept 2 had about 60 or so people, different design for the amphitheater with that concrete seat wall. And then concept 3, any type of seating situation would be part of the hillside that's in front of, was it Temple Beth Israel on the existing hill?
Burton House.
No, okay, perfect. Okay. So hopefully that answered the questions. We had a few questions related to that. Okay, so Nam is asking, between the 3 designs, are there estimates between them of the capacity for events like a wedding? So I know Sam just talked about the capacity a little bit for that entire property, which is, was it 200 for the lawn? And then we've also got capacity for the temple. Do we anticipate any changes to capacity on site once we make these changes? And this could be a question for development. It could also be a question for our operations team.
I can take that. We are not anticipating that we would be increasing the capacity for the venue. The capacity is the same as it, you know, the area is the same, the size doesn't change. So we're going to maintain the capacity as it is currently. And I believe there was another, that we missed something from Dan's question earlier, and it was the days and night, like what days we would do events. And currently we are, any of those event like weddings or movies in the park, we're doing them on weekend nights. The operation plan for this venue is not completely done yet, but that it'll probably remain pretty similar unless, there might be outliers, but for the most part, those are the days that we are available for rentals.
Great, thanks, Christine.
Sure.
All right. This is a great question also regarding operations. What's the policy going to be regarding dogs in the area? So I'll give that to you, Christine or Sam.
Yeah, I'll take it. It's same as all our other parks. A 6-foot leash is required for dogs in any of our parks that are not enclosed or off leash areas. So that rule will remain.
Great, thank you. Ooh, this is a good question. So having been a resident here for over 35 years, this individual has seen several attempts to accomplish enhancements at the site. What do we think is going to occur that makes this particular project a success? So this is a great question for our development team.
I can take that one, Jessica. Thanks so much for that question, Patty. Yes, so there have been previous attempts to accomplish enhancements on the site. One thing that's going to make it different this time is that the county is we are doing the design, we are doing all of the construction, we are the lead on the project. In previous attempts, we had a couple of other partners that we leaned on, and so this time the county is taking it on full force, and we'll be here a part of the process and leading the process through construction.
Great, thank you, Chelsea. All right, we have a question from an anonymous attendee. Can we elaborate on what is classified as a meeting, and will weddings also be hosted in the park? That is a great question. Weddings currently happen at the park, so they will continue to happen. We will just have a little bit of a revived space for those weddings. But what's great about some of these designs is that there's also some additional opportunities for seating, which is wonderful for some of those impromptu lunch meetings or small gatherings. There's a lot of different ways you can reserve the park. When you book a park, you just pay like a reservation fee, and that's for any special event. It's not different for a birthday party versus a wedding. But there are, some additional requirements based on what types of equipment or vendors you plan to bring in. All right, let's see here. Okay, Patty's asking, saying that she knows we've been working with the Old Town Chamber of Commerce to utilize the site for outreach efforts and events. Is that still going to be happening with our plans moving forward? Chelsea?
Yes, that is the plan moving forward, to continue our coordination efforts with the Old Town Chamber of Commerce and our other stakeholders in Old Town, making sure they're included and that we continue to collaborate, not just for this project as part of construction, but moving forward and as part of the Heritage Park.
Great, thank you. Oh, this is a great question. Will the plants and trees selected for this project complement the 19th century structures? It's another good question about the vegetation that'll be selected.
All right, so yes, for the plan is to have all the design elements be inspired by the Victorian era in some way, and yes, we would definitely want to make sure that our plant palette that we select does complement those structures. What that exactly means, we're still working out just because we're in the very preliminary stages of design, but we'll make sure to come back with some of that information when we have that ready.
Okay, well, I have you still here. We have another question regarding the design. Are we going to be providing any additional restroom facilities for the revitalized outdoor space versus what we currently have on site?
So we currently have on site, we have restrooms available here at the Sendless Cottage. That's open to the public as part of the park offerings. We do not currently have any restroom facilities in this back lawn area, and we do not currently propose to add any restroom facilities at this time.
Okay, thank you. This is a question regarding power. So for those special events that do take place in some of these concept designs, will there be distributed power and water on the far side, the west edge, to help facilitate event equipment? So give that one back to, I believe it's a development question as well, as we're looking at infrastructure.
Yeah, okay, so on the west edge, so right now we have proposed to have power in 2 locations. Sorry, I'm looking at my other screen here. So we have 2 proposed locations at the pergola and then at the any future meeting space. Let me go ahead and toggle over to our other concept plans to take a look at that. So for concept 1, kind of similar, we'd have power available at that pergola. And then also again, near the seating area. And then for this ornamental tree oval, we don't currently have, we only have it at the pergola location. However, we can always add the need for power, depending on feedback that we receive, but also in coordination with our operations team. And we're at the very preliminary stages, like I keep mentioning, but it's really helpful to understand, any requests that you have as far as programming goes to make sure that we make that incorporation into the next iteration.
Great, thank you. All right, I have an operational question here for Sam or Christine. Will the existing parking within Heritage Park support this upcoming or this potentially, new meeting space and those building occupants once we start to renovate the inside of those buildings? So can you talk a little bit about how many parking spots we currently have on site and what the situation typically is for a special event and kind of maybe any tips we give to folks when they plan special events there?
Absolutely. So we are, the park itself, oh yeah, I'm not unmuted. Okay, great. The park itself has 30 spots. And then we have an additional kind of an overflow parking for Heritage Park at the Best Western. And there's about 40 spots over there. And so between those 2, we think for most, I think we're gonna probably allow, the park itself will remain for the public and for events. And then the guests can park at the other structure. A parking study is part of this. Traffic and parking study will be part of the environmental review. And but currently, as you know, we do have events now and they utilize both of those parking spaces. And like we said, we're not planning on increasing necessarily number of attendees or what's allowed to be at the park. So hopefully that parking is sufficient for this project plan.
Okay, thank you. And then also just speaking of special events that are booked on site, Christine, how does a private reservation impact public use of Heritage County Park?
When somebody reserves the park or, the back lawn for a wedding, they tend to, they have their structures, they put their tables and chairs out there. We've had, for example, somebody mentioned something about the Chamber of Commerce. So we had a little beer garden there as part of a larger event that was going on in Old Town. And so it limits the access for the public. It doesn't mean you can't necessarily walk through, but you can't necessarily have a picnic. They've reserved that area. And that is common for most of our parks. Once an area is reserved for a certain group, they have the use of that area. So yes, once there's a rental, it does impact the public use, but hopefully there's enough park for everyone.
And usually when there's private reservations, we block off the area, right? We have A-frames. We also have park staff just to let people know that that area has been paid for that specific amount of time. So speaking of time, I have a question here also regarding operations for Sam or Christine. What hours are events currently allowed, and do you think that's going to change? And will events end by dusk?
Sam, you want to take that one?
Sure. So currently events, if we're asking about the time frame from when they can start and when they can end, typically we reserve the park spaces from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., the last hour of which needs to be clean up. So the event ends at 7 p.m. typically. There is an option for an hour of late stay. So at the latest, events end at 8 p.m. So ending at dusk Sometimes it doesn't happen when the dusk is at 5 p.m., when sunset is at 5 p.m., but year round, it won't go past 8 p.m. That's currently how we do it.
Great, thank you, Sam. Okay, we have some questions about the concept. Who is going to be making the final decision about that concept design? So we'll hand this one to David or Chelsea, depending on the mic situation, but maybe talk through next steps, right? The survey, getting public feedback, and then how that final design is adopted.
All right, thanks. So yes, as Jessica had mentioned, we have a couple of ways to get some feedback from you all. One is our meeting tonight, so this Q&A is really helpful. We will be able to look back at the questions that you all posted and make sure that we incorporate that feedback. We also have an online survey that is going to be available on this webpage. And I believe the link is also available in the chat. The survey is not up quite yet, but we do plan to have it up this week. So if you would like to either check back on the website, or you can email David Souls, his contact information is on the slide right now, and you can email him and he will send out a reminder once that information is available. So all that to say, there's a couple of opportunities. Also, you can feel free to reach out to David or myself as well for any other anything else, any other feedback that you have. And so after that, we take this information, we'll have the survey up for a little bit of time through March 1st, and then we will take the information, the feedback, and we will look at our environmental components. We'll look at our historic preservation. We will look at the needs for our operations team. We'll look at a variety of other components as well to take one of these concepts and refine them. And at that time, once that concept is ready, we will come back to you all and we'll share that concept plan and get more feedback from you all before moving forward. So it's going to be a very iterative process, and we hope that we're getting a lot of great questions. So it's really helpful for us. And we will use that along with the other things that I had mentioned to help influence the design, and we'll move that forward together as a collaborative effort.
Thanks, Chelsea. And just for the groups, so in case people missed it, I know we had a few people join us late. Can you pull up that schedule that we have for the project? Awesome. A little bit more. There it is. All right, so that's that progress or that process where we're going to continue to receive feedback from you. And it's so important for you to both post your questions here, but also take those surveys to let us know what you prefer. And then we'll just come back to you and provide what we heard and kind of talk through next steps. So we really appreciate your involvement in this whole process. All right, so we didn't talk about the houses. This is mostly talking about the outside space, but we are also looking at renovating some of those historic homes that have currently only had the exterior refurbished. Are we ready to talk about what the insides of those buildings might be used for once that project kicks off, Chelsea?
So I can answer that one. So yes, if there's a couple of questions and you're like, hey, I came in late and I missed this part. You didn't quite miss it. We're still working on a very preliminary draft of the proposed layout, the different rooms that might be inside the historic homes. So we're not quite ready to share that component yet, but that's why we wanted to come to you at least with some information. It's been a couple of months, and so we wanted to at least give an update on the outdoor amenities that we have programmed or proposed to have programmed. But just as a quick recap, so the first part of the project is to improve the outdoor amenities. So that's this back lawn that we've been referencing. And then also there is the improvement of taking the interiors of these homes here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and making improvements to have them be available for overnight accommodations. And so at the next meeting that we have in the spring, we will plan to provide a comprehensive update on that, as well as sharing kind of the next iteration of the outdoor amenities.
Great, thanks, Chelsea. And so question regarding our community outreach efforts. Are we working closely with SOHO?
Soho is one of our stakeholders, and yes, we are collaborating with them as part of the project.
Great, thank you. Okay, and this is more of an environmental question, I believe. Karen's asking if we're planning to do any type of parking study on the property. So that may have been something that was already completed, or maybe it's coming up, but is this an RMD question? Should I send this to our resource management division, or Chelsea, is that more of a development question?
I can take that. I
Okay,
can take
awesome.
that, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will be looking at parking as part of the design and environmental of this project. So as we move forward, we'll be looking at the existing parking and the existing and proposed uses for the project.
Okay, so and in that parking study, can you kind of let us know what's entailed, like what goes on when we complete a parking study?
So what we would end up doing is we would take a look at the existing, so we take a look at the uses that is currently on the site. So the amount of visitors we'd be having currently, by the types of uses and the amenities that we have on site. And then we also look at the proposed and the changes with those and how that leads to potentially impacting traffic and parking. So we do look at that traffic study as part of this effort in the environmental phase. And so we'd be looking at who would be coming, when they'd be coming, whether there's parking, how they would be coming in, whether it's driving or if they'd be using their bikes or if they'd be walking to the site. We know this is an area that is walkable to the community. So we'd be kind of taking a look at it from the traffic perspective and trying to see what the needs are of the project with regard to traffic.
Awesome. And I imagine that's a multi-jurisdictional effort with City of San Diego and other property managers in the area.
Correct. We'd be consulting with our stakeholders, looking at the existing uses nearby, existing facilities that might be nearby, and also talking to those stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. Great, have a question here for Sam. This is a kind of a comment, question, concern coming from Clifford. Clifford's asking if we need to worry about homeless camping in the area or any type of trashing of the park. What is our typical operational response if we were to come across a situation like that?
Sure, thanks. So typically what we do, we'll patrol the park regularly for all kinds of issues, park damage, and when we encounter unsheltered individuals, our steps are to inform them of the rules. Park staff endeavors to get voluntary compliance. That's kind of our rule enforcement strategy. So we're informing them of the rules, namely that the park is closed after sunset, and that also camping is not allowed in parks that don't have designated campsites, and you have to have a permit to camp. So there are a couple of rules that kind of apply to unsheltered individuals that are trying to camp at Heritage Park. I wouldn't say necessarily that it's a common occurrence, and I would say that it's probably more typically, we're a little bit lower on the spectrum of dealing with that than other areas in Old Town. So we're kind of lucky in that way. But that would be we would kind of continue to do that. And so when we contact unsheltered individuals, inform them of the rules and provide resources if needed. And then if it needs to elevate to contacting, let's say, the hot team with San Diego Police Department, we would continue to do that.
Great, thanks, Sam. Okay, so looking at the houses that we have on site, I know that some of them have not yet been used. They've not been open to the public. Have we ever hosted accommodations in those homes to date? Or is that something that we're looking at in the future just for special events? And that may be an operational question. Christine, is that something that you might be able to respond to?
Can you repeat the question? I don't know that I caught all of it.
Yeah. So the historic homes that are on site, have they typically been closed to the public outside of the tea house? And the one that was for a while operated as a parks office?
No, we actually, they were occupied at a certain point. Those buildings have been, there's two of them that used to be a B&B years ago. And so there was a shop in the Burton house there, the McConaughey is used as a tea house. There's been different iterations, but right now, they are all closed to the public and in different states of disrepair, I would say, and the interiors. So that's part of why we're doing this project, is that we want them to be usable. We want to do something with that space, and the idea of the overnight accommodations has been one that kind of grabbed hold. And that's kind of what we're moving forward with.
Okay, thanks, Christine. And still speaking of the hotels, do we have any idea of what that potential occupancy could be within those buildings that are being renovated?
I believe we are looking at something, depending on what the final design ends up being, somewhere between 18 and 24 rooms would be created between the 4 buildings. And some of them would be, doubles, some of them would be suites. And so it depends exactly on what we land, but it's anywhere between 18 and 24 rooms.
Great. Thank you. And for those of you who are still kind of new, learning about Heritage County Park, those homes did not all used to live in that space. They were moved from various parts of San Diego and put there. But we have a great question in the Q&A section here about, is there room for another house? Say there were another large historic home donation. Is there room on the property, or is this kind of building out the existing space? That may be a development question based on the space that's there. I currently am not aware of any agreements we have to move any additional historic homes. But we certainly do work with local historic organizations, and we accept donations gladly. So maybe Chelsea, looking at the property itself, is there room to potentially add another home should it be donated?
Sure, thank you. I can definitely jump in here. So the previous, I mentioned earlier that there was a couple of different iterations of, renovating the homes to be accessible to the public again. And that previous effort included having 3 new buildings that would kind of match the Victorian era homes, the historic ones. And they had proposed to have one here, one over here, and then one in between the tea house and the Burton house here. Now, that was a previous effort that is not part of the scope of this project right now. And we don't currently have any historic homes that we are at least notified of that would be interested in coming to our Heritage Park. And that is not currently part of this project.
Okay, thank you. I've got some really interesting questions here regarding gardening. For the plantings that are going to be added to the park, has there been any thought to native plants with informative placards, like at a botanical garden? And could there be space for a local gardening group to cultivate? So I think that's kind of a mixture of both the development of the property, right, and then how it's operated once it's created. But I love the idea. We certainly do have botanical gardens set up at other properties, bird and butterfly gardens, where we can kind of explain the plants and how they contribute, to bees and to butterflies and to all kinds of other living creatures in those spaces. I don't know if that would be part of the development plan or if that would be more of an operational add-on.
I can jump in on that. Yeah, so kind of goes to earlier, there was a kind of similar question where there was a request for ornamentals, or for the trees to also be fruit or food producing trees and plants. And then there was another question, I think almost at the exact same time, that was about whether the landscaping would be drought tolerant. So very similar here, where we're looking at kind of trying to balance between suitable plantings that are going to be good for a public park, but then also going to meet the aesthetic of the Victorian era of the park. So trying to balance those two. And what I mentioned earlier was we are still in the preliminary design of the plant palette and the landscaping. And so we will come back with some more information at the next meeting. Hopefully we'll have that information ready for you all to provide more detailed information at that time.
Awesome, thank you. All right, let's take a look at those concept plans again, because we have a question about which one would be best for weddings. I mean, currently the park is amazing for weddings. These would all kind of add some additional options. So maybe we can look at what the seating situation would be for these and how we'd take advantage of that existing pergola. And concepts was that 1 and 2 have more of that that concrete seating.
Yeah, so there's for concept 1, there is the seat walls here. This is most closely matches our existing use as far as the existing pergola location. This seats around, we're just estimating at this point, right? Pretty high level, 55 individuals. The second concept plan, the ornamental tree oval, we're looking at proposing to kind of rotate the pergola here. And this allows for that still that similar 55 to 60 individuals here on the seat wall, but then also creating a little bit more of a flexible space here for if there are weddings or events that are larger than that. And then the back lawn here for option or concept number 3. We have this seat wall here, which is still around 60. And so this almost creates the most flexible option because you have almost this seat wall here that's separated from the existing pergola location where if there was a wedding or larger event to occur, that would kind of have separate rentals associated with that.
Okay, thank you. So all are great, but it depends on the size of your group, right? And the intention of your special event. Okay. This is a really great comment. And I hope you add this to the survey as your response. But the question is there space for a historic garden that reflects specific 19th century garden trends, sort of a living history component? Very, very cool idea. I know we do that at some of our historic adobes. For example, Rancho Oklahoma adobe. We tried to maintain a lot of the vegetation that was originally planted in the garden space. But this is an awesome idea. So please include that in your survey response. And as the team is looking at different ways to add vegetation and also to add some, passive recreation opportunities, that could be something that could be plugged into the whole plan. So let's see here, what else we have. Okay, so another comment about parking. These changes could potentially bring additional park traffic, but we aren't currently doing anything to update the parking situation. However, we will be taking a close look at opportunities for the future. I think another important thing to note is the location to public transit and how so many more people are relying on rideshare services and public transit to get to some of these central locations, especially, Old Town or downtown San Diego County. So, there will be small improvements that could potentially increase traffic, but we also do see a lot of people are getting mobile in different ways. But we will certainly keep a pulse on that. And if there are issues that continue to rise, for example, our operations team keeps really close tabs on every property that they manage. So if they see that parking is becoming a serious issue, that's absolutely something they bring back to the greater Parks and Recreation team to try to remedy. Okay, let's see here. Have we discarded the idea of an amphitheater? This question is coming in from Helen. So Chelsea, do you want to take that one?
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks, Helen, for this question. To clarify, we are hoping to have an outdoor meeting space. It is not an amphitheater with, music performing venues. So if that's your definition of an amphitheater, then yes, we have discarded that. And we're looking at really just creating an outdoor meeting space and formalizing some of the existing use that we have now, which includes the wedding venue component.
All right. And then we have a question here that's more kind of an operational question about what do we do as a department when we encounter folks who are unsheltered in our public park properties, and how do we kind of work with local agencies and how to report up any potential issues and make sure that they don't continue to occur. So this is kind of a greater question for our department, but I might hand that one to Sam or to Christine from an operational perspective. To just kind of share what we do typically with parks as we're dealing with some of those folks who are unfortunately unsheltered.
Yeah, as you know, as we all know, living in San Diego, it is kind of it's a bigger issue than a park issue. It's not, it's something that we have to collaborate with a lot of different departments. We have a bit, we have teams within the county and outside using, with stakeholders, trying to figure out and coming up with real solutions, like you said in the comment, to these bigger concerns. And so, currently for example, at Waterfront Park, which is the other park that I manage, it was something that it was a concern for the community that it would become a place where the unsheltered population would camp overnight, for example. And we just have not seen that. We have a lot of, we've built in a lot of different strategies so that that doesn't occur. We have security, we have cameras, we have, there's the sheriffs is on site. So I'm not saying that we're going to apply exactly the same solutions here if it becomes an issue, but that we will look at it depending on what the specifics are of this location. And we will do our very best to mitigate those. It's different. Every area is different. And what you see, like you said, people tend to migrate. If one area no longer is available, they might move to a different area. And yes, it could become this, but it's, I would say at this park right now, it's more of an occasional issue than a chronic issue. And so we will address it as, depending on the level that it gets to. I hope that answers the question.
I think just to piggyback on that one too. So say we open up these historic homes as, bed and breakfasts or places for overnight accommodations for special events. Would we have staff on site to help manage those properties or contract out with an agency that had staff on site while guests are present?
So because we don't have, I think that was another question, that how are we going to operate this? And we don't have that operation plan yet. We don't know if it's going to be a contractor or somebody's going to do a proposal, or if the county's going to operate it. Either way, due to the accommodations, this is, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I would think that there would be overnight staff because we're going to have guests staying there overnight.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Okay, so maybe one of our friends from the resource management team wants to hop back on here. Just talking a little more about that parking study. So if we do one, how we kind of look at parking congestion and see whether or not we see differences in use in parking situations over time once the park is open. Can you talk a little bit about how we monitor the parking situation and look at ways to potentially improve anything that might need improvement?
I'm sorry, who was that one for?
Is that kind of a weird question? I'm sorry, guys. So we have a couple of questions regarding parking, right? So if parking does become an issue, right, because Old Town tends to be a pretty congested area, when we look at that traffic study, can you just talk a little more about the traffic study, how we conduct that, what we track, what we report out on, and what might initiate, changes, working with local transportation agencies to make updates to our property or to surrounding areas. And I think that's more of like a resource management question I could hand over, to Emily or Karen. I'll give them a chance to hop on here about traffic studies.
Thank you, Jessica. I can handle that.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly. So how the traffic study works is we look at a couple of things. So we start off by looking, like I was mentioning, so what the current uses are. So right now, what and we're just at the starting phases of this. So I'm sharing a little bit of a hypothetical on what we plan to do. So we don't have any results of this yet. We would have those at a later date and at a later meeting. But for right now, what we'll be doing is taking a look and having someone go out there to visit the current traffic rates and what's going on, the current traffic speeds of the people, the vehicles in the area, the amount of folks staying and coming to this area for this facility. From that, we would also compare it to how we are changing the use. So right now, let's say we are using it for weddings, and how many weddings we anticipate to have in a certain period of time, and how that impacts the amount of vehicles or the amount of visitors we see at this park. Then we'd compare it to the proposed project and how that might change. So it's kind of a point in time. So we first look at the existing conditions, then take a look at the ultimate project that we decide on. And as you can tell here, we're still in the design phases of the project itself. So we're not quite sure yet. We're hoping to get all of your feedback and get an understanding of what you as a community want to see in this park and want to see currently, what you like to see now and what you want to see in the future. So as we get that and feedback, we would be incorporating that into the traffic study to see how that might change.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we have a great recommendation here. Could one of the houses provide historical education and information instead of just overnight accommodation, sort of like an interpretive center? Very cool idea. We'll hand this one to our operations team, to Christine or Sam, to talk about potential uses. Again, I know it's operationally, we don't quite know what all of the
Right.
homes will be used for once they're gutted and renovated. However, maybe you want to provide a quick response to that, Christine?
Absolutely. One of the ideas is to provide an interpretive center at the Scentless Cottage. And to, we have some stuff there now, but we want to really upgrade it and really make it a lot more, really interesting, with a lot of interesting facts about the houses. And then I believe that in the design, we may have kind of like the lobby area would be available for people to come visit and see the inside of the houses, that one house. Otherwise, I think they're going to be limited to the people that are staying in them, to the overnight guests, for safety concerns. But that's a great idea. And I think that, we do have, there's walking tours, there's guided tours that happen in the park right now. And so we could incorporate some of that into those tours. But that is great. I mean, wish we had many more houses to do all sorts of different things in.
All right, and just a reminder, if you guys have questions, I saw a few of them pop up in the chat. The best way for us to track all of the questions and comments that come in is to please post them in the Q&A pane. We'll take a look there. We'll do our best to answer all of the questions. If we miss anything, please, please, please include your question in your survey response, or connect directly with our project management team, and they can provide you with that information. So real quick, we had a question about, the use of the lawn right now. And Sam, since you're the ranger who kind of oversees that whole property, can you talk a little bit about the use of the lawn currently, and what we do to save water for watering the grass, and kind of our overall lawn maintenance plan?
Sure. So we use a smart irrigation controller to irrigate the lawn. So it kind of tracks water use, the rain and evapotranspiration, all kinds of stuff. And so it waters the back lawn in a smart way to conserve water. The back lawn is used by weddings, events, and then first come, first serve park visitors. So we don't allow any driving on the lawn. We try and keep the lawn as nice as possible. And I hope that answers the question. Do we need any other further clarification on that?
I think we got it, but for
Okay.
the individual who asked questions about the lawn, please feel free to post any more in the Q&A section, not the chat, but the Q&A section, just to make sure we can track it. And I have another maintenance question for you, Sam, while you're here. Is part of the grounds maintenance plan, does it include period appropriate uniforms for park rangers and groundskeepers? Another really great question. So are people going to be dressing for the era who are working on site? I believe that's still all part of the operational plan. We tend to have a pretty strict dress code for our park staff. So it's obvious who's a park ranger and who's not. But I know we have some historic sites where we have volunteers who dress up. So Sam, do you want to take that one?
Sure. We have had in the past docents that do period costuming when they're conducting a tour. Currently, our maintenance staff wears the park maintenance worker uniforms, and the park ranger staff wears park ranger uniforms, and our park attendants wear the park attendant uniforms, which are park maintenance worker uniforms. So it's we have a strict policy and procedure for our uniforms. As far as upcoming maintenance staff, I think that would probably stay the same, consistent with our uniform policy.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Yeah, we do definitely have some, some of our other historic properties. We have volunteers who dress up and who help lead some tours, serve as docents on site. So, that's all part of the operational plan that'll be developed as we have that completed property, and it's time to open it up to the public. All right, let me see if there's anything else in here. There's a comment in here about resources at the property. This is a popular park. So is Waterfront Park, which is close by. Of course, our parks have gotten a lot of visitation, especially in recent years. I think we've all been able to celebrate the opportunity to spend quality time outside when we were stuck indoors. So, what's great to see is that we continue to find creative ways to engage people in park properties and to provide different ways for them to recreate on site and just to spend that quality time outside. So, it'll be interesting to see in the future how resources are allocated, but we certainly take all feedback from the public to heart. We track everything, and we change with trends, and we change with the population. So if we see needs in a specific area, we can always work to transition resources to the proper location and make sure that the programs are running and the staffing that we have is appropriate for both the time and the space. Okay, we're running a little over on time. I might just see here. We have a question about Airbnbs. It's still too soon to know the answers to that and the any hours. That's all part of the operational plan that's yet to be developed. So, but please, include your feedback in the survey. And let me see if there's anything else in here that we haven't quite addressed yet. All right, sorry, one more question here. Okay, we have another parking question. Let's see here. In the previous attempt to allow a commercial company to manage or monetize county-owned homes in Heritage Park, one sticking point was the need to create additional parking spots for additional hotel rooms. What does the city requirement, or why does the city requirement not apply anymore in this case? Is this the public transit explanation? So I am not familiar personally with what the codes are for adding additional accommodations to a park property. I know our development team would be aware of that and any requirements the city might have for zoning. Chelsea, do you have any information to share with that?
Sure, I can jump in a little bit on the parking discussion. So we currently have this parking spaces available here. And that is planned to support the existing use, which is our day use and our event parking. So we don't plan to change this at all. In addition to these parking spaces, we have additional parking spaces that are off-site just across the street here. And those we're looking at kind of still working through what those requirements are, but we do have, I think it's over 40 parking spaces that are off-site. So we're looking to see if there's a way we could have our guests for our overnight accommodations utilize those spaces by enforcing some kind of parking maximum. But that's something that we're just in the very preliminary stages. And Christine, if there's anything you'd like to add, feel free to jump in.
Absolutely. So what we do see is, there's the difference between just like the daily park use, and what we've seen is that this parking has been sufficient for that. We really the additional parking spaces that we have across the street, they're rarely used. So that is something that we can capitalize on and start using it and start putting it as really part of this. As part of the operation of the historic inns. In terms of events, that is more, and I think that might be where the concern comes from, is that, but Old Town has events all the time, and I think that this is where the concerns are, is that they affect the neighbors, and so we will do, we can work with the chamber, we can work with other entities within Old Town as well. to, you know, there's a special event in one facility, like in one area, maybe that we don't do a special event somewhere else at the same time, so that there's enough parking for everyone, and that it doesn't impact the neighborhood as much. But that's, you know, I understand the concern, and we understand that it is, you know, somebody said in the chat that there was, you know, it appears that we're contradicting, but there is a difference between kind of like our everyday use and that of an event, and we don't have events. It's not it's not something that happens all the time at this park. Not being very eloquent, but that's hopefully I answered the question.
Okay, thank you, Christine. All right, we have a good question from one of our anonymous attendees. Why was the in-person meeting canceled? We are still canceling public meetings just for a little bit longer that are in person, just based on capacities. So that we thought the virtual meeting was actually a better way for more people to get engaged. And what's cool about this is we also can post the recording on our website immediately following the meeting. So anybody who could not join us tonight will be able to watch that recording and still be a part of the process. Because we will be also posting links to our surveys, which have images of those concept plans that were discussed. So it was a bummer not to be able to meet in person. We hope to be able to do that again soon for our next public meeting, but we really appreciate those of you who joined us tonight. Thank you for your feedback, for your comments. Clifford, thank you for all the tips that you've been providing. I really appreciate that. I hope that you're connected to David on this project so that you're part of that distribution list whenever new updates come up. And great, we have got David's contact info on the screen. Wonderful. Anybody who wants project details, please make sure you're on that list there, and you'll get all the updates. And with that, I think any info that we shared tonight, again, will be made available publicly on our website. So please check back, give us a day or so just to pull everything together and post it, but check back on our website, sdparks.org. If you just click down from the plan section to public meetings, you'll see links to past meetings, you'll see surveys, all kinds of good stuff. So those are the details. And regarding our next public meeting, can we real quick, one more time, pull up that schedule so we can see when that is slated to take place?
There you go. Sorry about that. So yes, so we are in that second design outreach here. We plan to come back again to you all in this virtual format and hopefully in person, but still pending that in spring, this in a couple of months, once we have some more information on the interiors as well as refinement of the exterior concept.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, please take the survey. Once you guys have those links, let us know what you think. This is a public process, so your feedback really does matter, and we're just doing what we can to help improve the space along with the times to make sure that you get the most use out of it as possible. So thank you. I'm going to step off the mic here and hand this back over to Chelsea and David to close out the meeting.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone's comments and helping us have a better understanding of your perspective on Heritage Park. So as mentioned, we have our next public meeting coming up in a couple of months. If you would like a personal invitation to that, we'll be sending out flyers again. But if you'd like to be on the email distribution list, you can go ahead and contact David Souls here. His email address is all the way down here. You can go ahead and call him. And he can help make sure that you're on the distribution list. And just wanted to say thank you so much again and for joining us, and looking forward to hearing further feedback from you all. And thank you for joining us this evening. Have a great night.